Mankind never forgets a favor. Their payback shakes. Worlds 4 years had passed since the Iron Promise died in the void. The galaxy had moved on, as galaxies do. The Krath Dominion still ruled its territories with brutal efficiency. The Galactic Council still met in its grand chambers on the core worlds, making decisions that affected trillions of lives. And humanity still struggled to find its place among civilizations thousands of years older. Admiral Minji stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the diplomatic rejection that glowed on her screen. It was the 4th this month. The human colony on Tayson 3 needed medical supplies, but the Sessic merchant houses had refused to trade. Not because they lacked supplies, simply because humanity was not important enough to bother with. Another rejection? Her first officer asked. Another rejection, Minji confirmed. She was one of the 5 survivors from the Iron Promise. The memory of that day haunted her still. Day's calm voice making the choice that had cost him everything. The way the ship had torn apart around them. The long hours in the escape pod, wondering if anyone would find them before their oxygen ran out. Another human patrol ship had rescued them eventually. Now 4 years later, she commanded humanity's largest warship, which was not saying much. Humanity had 3 colonies and 43 military vessels total. They were still newcomers, still learning, still seen as children playing at galactic politics. "Ma'am, there's a priority message coming through," the communications officer announced. "It's marked urgent from Earth Command." Minji opened the message and felt her blood go cold. The Krath Dominion had delivered an official ultimatum. Humanity had 30 days to abandon all their colonies and submit to what the Krath called cultural re-education. The reason given was interference in Krath internal affairs 4 years ago. They remembered the Iron Promise. And now they wanted payment. "Get me a channel to Earth Command," Minji ordered. Her hands were steady, but inside she felt the old fear rising. Humanity had 43 ships. Intelligence reports said the Krath were assembling an armada of 600 vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Across the galaxy, in a system no star charts showed, a different kind of gathering was taking place. The world was called New Haven, and it was beautiful. Gardens covered every available surface with flowers and trees from 100 different worlds. The air smelled like growing things and hope. Elder Juan walked slowly through these gardens, his wings now white with age. He was 147 years old, ancient for a Villani, but he had lived long enough to see his species begin its recovery. 50,000 Villani now lived on New Haven. The genetic samples from their homeworld had been preserved and expanded. They were few, but they were alive, and they had not forgotten. "Elder, the representatives are arriving," his daughter Yuna said, walking beside him. Her wings were still vibrant blue, strong and healthy. She had been only 15 during the escape. Now she was a leader herself, helping guide their small civilization. "How many species responded to our invitation?" Juan asked. 112, Yuna replied. "More than we expected," Juan nodded slowly. For 4 years, the Villani had worked in secret. They had used their greatest gifts to help other species. Their biological knowledge had cured plagues. Their agricultural expertise had fed starving colonies. Their ecological engineering had restored damaged worlds. But they had done more than simply help. With each species they aided, they had told a story. The story of a human cargo ship that had sacrificed everything to save people they did not know. The story of Captain Day and his crew who had chosen death over abandoning children to monsters. They had not asked for anything in return except one thing. Remember this. Remember what humanity did. Now, ships from 112 species were arriving in orbit above New Haven. Some were powerful civilizations. Most were not. They were the forgotten species, the minor powers, the ones the Galactic Council barely acknowledged. But each one remembered the story, and each one owed the Villani a debt. In the Great Hall, representatives gathered. There were the Lithians, whose crystalline forms caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. The Quellan, small and swift masters of stealth technology. The Vorn, massive and bear-like, their strength legendary. The Sistari, whose understanding of computers and artificial intelligence was unmatched. Juan stood before them all, his old voice amplified so everyone could hear. "My friends, I have asked you here because a debt must be repaid. 4 years ago, humanity saved the Villani people. They had no reason to help us. They gained nothing from it. 7 humans died so that Villani children could live." The hall was silent. Everyone had heard the story. The Villani had made sure of that. Now humanity faces extinction, Juan continued. The Krath Dominion has given them an ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed. Humanity has 43 ships. The Krath are sending 600. In 30 days, unless something changes, humanity will be wiped from the galaxy. Juan paused, letting that sink in. Then he pressed a control and a hologram appeared. It showed the bridge of the Iron Promise in its final moments. Captain Day's voice filled the hall, calm and certain. But you've got kids on that ship. We can't just leave while children die. That's not who we are. The hologram faded. Juan looked at the assembled representatives. Humanity saved my people when they had everything to lose and nothing to gain. They taught the Villani that morality is not about convenience. It is about choice. About doing what is right even when it costs you everything. His voice grew stronger. Now they face the same extinction we faced. They stand alone as we stood alone. The Galactic Council will not help them. The ancient powers will not risk war with the Krath over newcomers they consider insignificant. Juan spread his white wings wide. So I ask you, representatives of 112 species, what are we? Are we beings who forget kindness? Who ignore debts? Who let good people die because it is not convenient to save them? One by one, representatives stood. The Lithian ambassador, his crystalline body chiming softly, spoke first. The Villani saved my people from plague. But before that, humans saved the Villani. This debt runs deep. The Lithians will answer. The Quellan representative was next. We will bring our stealth technology. Humanity will not stand alone. The Vorn leader's voice boomed through the hall. The Villani gave us food when we starved. The humans gave the Villani life itself. The Vorn remember. We will send our warriors. Around the hall, the response echoed. We remember. We will answer. Not every species could send much. Many were small civilizations with limited resources. But they would send what they could. Ships, technology, warriors, supplies. A fleet was forming from species the galaxy barely acknowledged. The forgotten were gathering to save the newcomers. Back on Earth, President Taeyang addressed the planet. His face was grave, his words honest. We face extinction. The Krath Armada will arrive in 30 days. We have sent requests to the Galactic Council. All have been denied. We have asked for trade routes to be opened for supplies. All have been refused. He paused and his voice dropped. We will fight to our last breath. Every ship, every station, every person who can hold a weapon will stand against this threat. We will not submit. We will not surrender. If humanity ends, it will end with courage. Admiral Minji watched the broadcast from her ship. She was preparing defensive positions around Earth. 43 ships against 600. It was hopeless, but Day had taught her something 4 years ago. Sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because it is right to fight. Her communications officer suddenly stood up, staring at his console in confusion. Admiral, I'm getting reports from our outer system sensors. Ships are entering our space. The Krath are early? Minji demanded. No, ma'am. These aren't Krath signatures. I'm reading multiple jump points opening. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Minji pulled up the sensor data and felt her breath catch. Ships were appearing throughout the solar system. Not an organized fleet. A chaotic mix of vessels. Cargo ships, colony transports, mining vessels, medical ships. All of them converging on Earth, ma'am, were being hailed. It's a Villani ship, the view screen activated. An old Villani sat on a medical platform, his wings white as snow. His voice was weak but clear. Admiral Minji, do you remember me? She recognized him. The captain they had saved. Captain Juan? Elder Juan now, he corrected gently. Admiral, the Villani have come to repay a debt. We are not alone. The sensor display lit up like a festival. Thousands of ship signatures. Minji stared in disbelief. Who are they all? Juan's old eyes held warmth and something like justice. Everyone you saved 4 years ago when you saved us. And everyone we have told your story to since. You see, Admiral, humanity taught us a lesson. You showed us that one act of kindness can echo across time. He gestured, and the camera view expanded to show the gathered fleet. The Lithians remember. The Quellan remember. The Vorn, the Sistari, the Thellan, the Grax. 112 species remember what humanity did, and they have come to stand with you. Tears ran down Minji's face. We didn't do it for this. We didn't expect payment. We know, Juan said softly. That is exactly why we are here. You see, humanity never forgets a favor. Mankind never forgets a favor. Their payback shakes worlds. The Krath Armada arrived exactly on schedule. 600 warships emerged from jump space in perfect formation. a display of military precision that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. At their center was the command dreadnought Eternal Dominance, bristling with weapons capable of cracking planets. War Master Threx stood on his bridge, surveying the human homeworld through the view screen. It was a pleasant planet, mostly blue water and green land. It would be a shame to destroy it, but the humans had interfered in Krath affairs. They had helped genetic inferiors escape justice. Such defiance could not be tolerated. Begin scanning for defensive positions, Threx ordered. I want all military assets identified before we open fire. His sensor officer worked at his station, then paused. His clawed hand moved across the controls again, as if confirming something impossible. War Master, I am reading multiple contacts. Thousands of ships in defensive formations around the human world. Threx laughed, a harsh sound. The humans managed to build thousands of ships in 4 years? Show me. The tactical display appeared and Threx stopped laughing. Ships filled the space around Earth. Not human vessels. Signatures from dozens of species. Hundreds of species. Cargo haulers, mining ships, colony transports, medical vessels. A chaotic mess of civilian craft arranged in defensive lines. What is this? Threx demanded. I am identifying species signatures, War Master. Lithian, Quellan, Vorn, Sistari, Thelin, Grax, and hundreds more. Most are minor species. None are council members. Threx understood warfare. This was not a military fleet. This was a gathering of the weak, the irrelevant, the species that the galaxy barely noticed. They had armed their civilian ships and come to defend humanity. It was pathetic. It was also tactically meaningless. Open a channel to all vessels, Threx ordered. Let me educate them. When the channel opened, his voice carried across space to every ship in the Allied fleet. Attention, inferior species. You are interfering in Krath justice. You have one opportunity to withdraw. Those who remain will be destroyed along with the humans. Choose wisely. The response came not from a military commander, but from an old Villani on a medical platform. War Master Threx, I am Elder Juan. 4 years ago, the Krath hunted my people to extinction. Humanity saved us when they had no reason to help. Now we stand with them. You may destroy us, but you will find we are not as easy to kill as you believe. Threx closed the channel. Target their capital ships. Prepare to fire. On the human flagship Defiance, Admiral Minji watched the Krath fleet arrange itself. Her command center was filled with representatives from the allied species, each coordinating their forces. It was chaos compared to the Krath precision, but it was organized chaos. All ships, this is Admiral Minji. The Krath are about to attack. Remember your training. Stay with your wings, trust your partners, and know that today we fight not just for humanity, but for every species that is tired of being called inferior. The first Krath dreadnought opened fire. A massive beam weapon cut through space and struck a Lithian mining ship. The crystalline vessel shattered into 1,000 pieces, each fragment scattering light as it died. 17 Lithian souls gone in an instant. Then the Allied fleet responded. It was not coordinated. It was not elegant. But it was overwhelming. Thousands of ships opened fire simultaneously. Mining lasers, cargo tractor beams weaponized. Even some ships simply ramming Krath vessels with their reinforced hulls. Threx watched in growing anger as his perfectly organized fleet had to respond to attacks from every angle. A Quellan stealth ship appeared from nowhere and launched human marines directly onto a Krath cruiser. The marines fought with a brutality that shocked the Krath. Humans did not fight like civilized species. They fought like animals, using knives and bare hands when their weapons ran out. Vorn warriors joined the boarding actions, their massive forms perfect for ship corridors. A single Vorn could tear through Krath battle armor with their claws. Together with human marines, they turned 3 Krath ships into floating tombs within an hour. Target the Vorn transports, Threx ordered. Remove their ground forces from the battle. But when his weapons targeted the transports, Sistari computer viruses crashed his targeting systems. The Krath had better technology, but they had never faced opponents who fought with such creativity. Every species in the Allied fleet was using their unique abilities in ways the Krath had never anticipated. Admiral Minji stood at her command station, coordinating the chaos. She had learned something during her years in space. Humans were good at warfare not because they were stronger or had better weapons. They were good at warfare because they adapted. They learned. They used every advantage, no matter how small. Lithian Wing 3, reform at coordinates 774, she ordered. Quellan Stealth Group, I need you to disable the sensors on that dreadnought. Foreign assault ships, prepare for boarding action on my mark. Around her, alien commanders worked seamlessly with human officers. The Volani used their biological knowledge to identify weak points in Krath ship designs. The Thelon, who processed information faster than any species, served as tactical analysts. The Grax, with their multiple arms, manned weapon stations with impossible efficiency. It was a dance of dozens of species, each contributing what they could. And slowly, impossibly, it was working. But the cost was terrible. Ships died by the dozens. The Krath were warriors, and they did not die easily. For every Krath vessel destroyed, 10 allied ships were lost. The space around Earth filled with debris and bodies. Minji watched the casualty reports climb and felt each death like a knife. Admiral, the Krath Command Dreadnought is charging its planet killer weapon, her tactical officer announced. Minji saw it on the display. The Eternal Dominance was moving into position. If that weapon fired, Earth would die. Billions of humans would be wiped away in seconds. Everything would be for nothing. All ships target that dreadnought, she ordered. Hit it with everything we have. But the dreadnought's shields were too strong. Weapons fire splashed against them uselessly. The planet killer continued charging. Then a small vessel broke from the Volani formation. It was an old shuttle, moving on a collision course with the dreadnought. Minji's sensors identified it immediately. Elder Juan, what are you doing? She shouted over the comm. The old Volani's face appeared one last time. His white wings were spread wide, and he was smiling. Admiral, 4 years ago your captain taught me something. Sometimes the only choice is to stand between monsters and innocence. I'm old. My time is ending anyway, but those children we saved, they are down there on your world, living and growing. Let me make sure they stay that way. Juan, no, Minji pleaded. But the shuttle was already accelerating beyond its safe limits. It streaked toward the dreadnought like a falling star. Threk saw it coming and ordered point defense to destroy it, but the small vessel was too fast, too determined. The shuttle impacted directly on the planet killer weapon port. The explosion was massive. It tore through the weapon into the power core, through the entire forward section of the dreadnought. The Eternal Dominance broke apart, its death throes visible across the entire battlefield. Juan's last words echoed across every channel. The debt is paid. Humanity live well. The loss of their command ship broke the Krath formation. For the first time in 300 years, the Krath fleet was in disarray. Minji saw the opportunity and took it. All ships full attack. Show them what happens when good people decide to fight. The Allied fleet surged forward. Lithian ships used their crystalline drills as weapons, cutting through Krath hulls. Quellan vessels delivered more boarding parties. Foreign assault craft rammed enemy ships. Sistari viruses disabled entire sections of the Krath fleet. And humans, with their terrible creativity, found 1,000 ways to hurt their enemies. They used debris as weapons. They overloaded their own cores to create makeshift bombs. They fired cargo containers full of rocks using magnetic accelerators, turning civilian equipment into devastating weapons. Threx watched his perfect fleet being torn apart by species he had considered beneath notice. These were not warriors. They were farmers, traders, engineers. But they fought with a desperation and creativity his forces could not match. All ships retreat, he finally ordered, the words like poison in his mouth. The Krath fleet began withdrawing. It was not a rout. They were too disciplined for that. But it was a retreat, the first time in centuries that the Krath had been forced to withdraw from a battle. As the last Krath ships jumped away, silence fell across the Allied fleet. The battle had lasted 8 hours. The space around Earth looked like a graveyard. Thousands of ships destroyed, hundreds of thousands dead. 17 species had lost their entire contributions, every ship and every soul. Admiral Minji stood on her damaged bridge and looked at the casualty reports. The human fleet had been reduced to 12 operational ships. Of the Allied fleet, barely 40% survived. But Earth still orbited its sun. Humanity still lived. Admiral, we're receiving messages from the surviving ships, her communications officer said quietly. Minji listened as species after species reported in. Their voices were tired, grieving, but unbroken. They had lost so much, but they had saved a people who once saved others. And that meant something. Mankind never forgets a favor. Their payback shakes worlds. The alarm screamed through the damaged ship as Juan gripped his command chair. Sparks flew from broken panels around him while his crew worked frantically at their stations. The small vessel shuddered with each failing system. Through the viewport, he could see stars spinning as the ship tumbled out of control. "Engineering, I need those stabilizers now," Juan called out, trying to keep his voice steady. His butterfly-like wings, normally a brilliant blue, were folded tight against his back in fear. "Captain, the damage is too severe," his engineer replied, her voice breaking. "We have maybe an hour before life support fails completely." Juan closed his eyes. Behind him, in the cargo hold, 18 children huddled together. They were the last younglings of the Villani people. Their wings had not even fully formed yet. Somewhere in that same hold were containers holding the genetic samples of their destroyed homeworld. Everything the Villani had been, everything they could be again, depended on this one failing ship. The Krath had been hunting them for 3 days straight. The war cruiser called Bone Render had chased them across 2 star systems. The Krath believed in purity above all else. They had decided the Villani were genetically inferior. 2 billion souls had already been eliminated in their crusade. Juan's ship carried perhaps the last 500 Villani left alive in the entire galaxy. "Contact on sensors," the navigator announced suddenly. "Another ship is approaching." Juan felt his heart sink. It was over. The Krath had found them again. There would be no escape this time. But then the navigator looked up with confusion in her large eyes. "Captain, it's not the Krath, it's a human vessel." "A human ship? Out here in the forgotten edges of space?" Juan had heard of humans. They were newcomers to galactic civilization. Only 200 years since they had achieved faster-than-light travel. Most species considered them unremarkable. They had no great technology, no powerful military, no political influence. They were traders and explorers scattered across a handful of small colonies. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. "Put them through." A face appeared on the cracked view screen. A human male with dark hair and tired eyes. He wore the simple uniform of a cargo hauler captain. "This is Captain Day of the Iron Promise. We received your distress signal. What's your situation?" Juan hesitated. What could he say? That his entire species was being exterminated? That a Krath war cruiser would arrive within the hour? That any ship that helped them would be destroyed? "Captain Day," Juan began slowly, "we appreciate your response, but you should leave this area immediately. We are being pursued by a Krath warship. They will show no mercy to anyone who aids us." There was a pause. Day looked off screen, apparently speaking to someone on his crew. Then he looked back. "How many are aboard your ship?" 503 souls, Juan replied. 18 of them are children. Another longer pause. Juan could see the calculation happening behind the human's eyes. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Krath. They were powerful, brutal, and protected by galactic law. Helping refugees flee from Krath justice was technically interference in a council member's internal affairs. No consequences would fall on the Krath. All punishment would land on whoever helped. "Stand by," Day said, and the channel closed. Juan slumped in his chair. Of course, the humans would run. Why wouldn't they? It was the logical choice. The only choice, really. He couldn't blame them. Then his sensors officer gasped. "Captain, the human ship is changing course. They're moving to intercept the Krath vessel." "What?" Juan stood up so fast his wings spread involuntarily. "Get them back on comms now." Day's face reappeared. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. "Captain Juan, I'm going to buy you some time. My engineer is sending you coordinates for a jump point. When you get your engines stable enough, you go there. Don't wait. Don't look back." "Captain Day, you can't do this," Juan said desperately. "That's a Krath war cruiser. Your ship is a cargo hauler. They will destroy you." "Probably," Day agreed. His slight smile was heartbreaking in its acceptance. "But you've got kids on that ship. We can't just leave while children die. That's not who we are." "You don't even know us," Juan protested. "We're nothing to you. Your species has no obligation here." "No obligation," Day said quietly. "Just a choice. Your coordinates are uploaded. Good luck, Captain. Take care of those kids." The channel closed before Juan could respond. Through the viewport, he watched the small human cargo ship accelerate toward where the Krath cruiser would emerge from its jump. The Iron Promise was maybe 1/50th the size of a Krath warship. It had basic cargo shields and almost no weapons. 12 humans were about to face a crew of 300 Krath warriors in a purpose-built instrument of death. "Captain, what do we do?" his navigator asked. Juan's mind raced. This made no sense. Humans were supposed to be practical. Logical. They were traitors, not warriors. Why would they throw away their lives for strangers? For refugees of a species that had nothing to offer in return? Then the Krath cruiser emerged from its jump and time became precious. For 20 minutes, Juan and his crew watched in horror and awe as the Iron Promise danced with death. The human ship used every trick imaginable. They released cargo containers as debris fields. They burned their engine core beyond safety limits to create electromagnetic interference. They fired their pathetic mining lasers at critical sensor nodes on the massive Krath ship. A human woman's voice came over the emergency channel. Minji to Villani ship. We've damaged their jump drive and main engines. You've got maybe 15 minutes before they get their backup systems online. Go. Now. What about your crew? Juan asked. We've got escape pods, Minji replied, though her voice shook. We'll be fine. You just make sure our sacrifice counts for something. Make sure those kids grow up safe. Juan watched through tears as the Krath cruiser finally landed a direct hit on the Iron Promise. The small human ship split in half, fire blooming in the vacuum of space. Life pods ejected in multiple directions. Get us out of here, Juan ordered, his voice thick. Jump as soon as we have engine power. His crew worked in silence, their own grief mixing with desperate hope. Around them, space filled with debris from a ship that had died so they could live. 7 humans had been killed in the engagement. 7 people who had chosen to stand between monsters and children they had never met. As the jump drive powered up, Juan opened his captain's log. His hands trembled as he recorded his words. This day the Villani people received a gift beyond price. Humanity, a species we barely knew, sacrificed everything to save us. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They simply could not stand by while children were murdered. He paused, looking at his crew, at the children being comforted in the cargo hold, at the genetic samples that represented their species' future. The Villani are few in number now, he continued. We have lost our homeworld, our civilization, nearly all our people. But we have gained something precious. We have learned what true courage looks like. We have witnessed what it means to value life above survival. Through the viewport, another human life pod tumbled past, its beacon flashing. Juan made a vow that would echo through the decades to come. The Villani remember. We will rebuild. We will survive. And we will repay this debt. I swear it on every soul we lost, on every child we saved. Humanity will never stand alone again. This I promise. The jump drive engaged and the stars stretched into lines of light. Behind them, the Krath cruiser floated dead in space, its engines disabled. Ahead, somewhere in the vast darkness, lay hope. And in Juan's hearts burned a debt that would reshape the galaxy itself. Mankind never forgets a favor. Their payback shakes worlds. 6 months after the Battle of Terra, the Galactic Council chambers looked the same as they had for 1,000 years. Grand columns reached toward impossibly high ceilings. Seats for 500 species rose in careful tiers arranged by age and influence. At the center, the Council of Ancients sat in their elevated positions, the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space. But something had changed. The chamber felt different, uncertain. Ambassador Keiko represented humanity at these sessions now. She stood at the speaker's platform, small compared to many of the beings around her. Behind her sat representatives from the 112 species that had fought at Terra. They had come together, and they were not being quiet about it. The Council recognizes the human ambassador, the speaker announced, his voice echoing through the vast space. Keiko activated the holographic display. It showed the casualty reports from the Battle of Terra. Species names scrolled past. Numbers that represented lives lost. 17 species had been completely wiped out defending humanity. 6 months ago, the Krath Dominion attempted to exterminate humanity. Keiko began. Her voice was calm but clear. This was legal under galactic law. We appealed to this council for help. We were denied. We appealed for trade to purchase weapons. We were denied. We appealed for diplomatic intervention. We were denied. She paused, letting that sink in. So 112 species, none of them council members, came to our defense. They lost over half their combined fleet. Hundreds of thousands died, and they did this because they remembered kindness, because they chose to value life over law. A council member from the Sessic merchant houses leaned forward. Ambassador, the council sympathizes with your losses, but you must understand the Krath are a council member species. We cannot interfere in their internal affairs. That has been galactic law for 10,000 years. Keiko smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then galactic law is broken, honored counselor. Because that law just told 113 species that their lives do not matter, that they can be exterminated legally and no one will help them. That morality is less important than procedure. Murmurs ran through the chamber. The Council of Ancients looked uncomfortable. The Council will discuss possible reforms, the speaker said. In the meantime, we order the Allied fleet to disband. Such a military gathering without Council authorization is illegal. Keiko looked at the speaker directly. With respect, honored speaker, no. Silence fell. No one said no to the Galactic Council. Not in 10,000 years of recorded history. What did you say? The speaker asked carefully. I said no, Keiko repeated. The species that fought together at Terra have formed an alliance. We call it the Covenant of the Grateful. It is not a military pact. It is a mutual defense agreement. We will protect each other since this council has made it clear it will not protect us. The chamber erupted in noise. Council members shouted. Ancient species demanded order. But below, in the seats for minor species, something different happened. Representatives stood and applauded. On Earth, President Taiyang faced his own difficult decisions. The victory at Terra had made humanity famous. For the first time, other species knew who humans were. Some wanted alliances, some wanted trade, and some wanted to use humanity's new reputation for their own purposes. We could leverage this, his defense minister argued. Build a real military, claim territory, finally make humanity a power in the galaxy. Taeyang sat in his office looking at reports from across human space. The colonies were recovering. Trade was opening up. For the first time, humanity had options. They could choose what kind of species they wanted to be. Get me Admiral Minji, he said finally. When Minji appeared on the screen, she looked older. The battle had aged her. She had watched thousands die, had ordered people to their deaths, had survived when better people had not. Admiral, I need your advice, Taeyang said. What should humanity do now? We have influence, power. We could build an empire if we wanted. Minji was quiet for a long moment. Mr. President, 4 years ago, Captain Day had a choice. He could have run. He could have saved his crew. He chose to help people he did not know, and it cost him everything. She looked directly at the camera. That choice saved the Villani. It led to them saving us. It created an alliance of 113 species who chose compassion over convenience. Day never knew any of that would happen. He just did what was right. So what are you saying? Taeyang asked. I am saying that we should not build an empire. We should build something better. We should be the species that helps others, not because it profits us, but because it is who we are. Taeyang smiled. That was what I hoped you would say. 6 months after the battle, the Covenant of the Grateful held its first official meeting on New Haven. The gardens were more beautiful than ever, grown from seeds of 100 worlds. In the center stood a new monument still being constructed. It showed Captain Day and Elder Huan, their hands clasped together. Admiral Minji stood before that monument with Huan's daughter Yuna. The young Villani's wings shimmered blue in the sunlight. Your father saved humanity, Minji said quietly. He gave everything. He paid a debt, Yuna replied. And he taught the galaxy a lesson. That kindness is not forgotten. That sacrifice matters. That even small people can change everything. Around them, representatives from 113 species gathered. They came to formalize their alliance. But more than that, they came to decide what that alliance would be. Minji stepped up to address them all. We have a choice to make. We can be a military alliance focused on power and territory, or we can be something the galaxy has not seen before. We can be an alliance built on helping others. She gestured to the monument. Day did not save the Villani to gain power. He did it because it was right. That choice rippled across years and saved humanity. I propose we continue that ripple, that we dedicate ourselves to helping species in need, regardless of profit or power. A Lithian representative stood, his crystalline form chiming softly. My people were saved from plague by the Villani. We stand ready to help others in need. Aquelin spoke next. We have stealth technology that could protect refugees from persecution. We will share it. One by one, species pledged not weapons but aid, medical technology, agricultural knowledge, engineering expertise, resources to help the helpless. The Covenant of the Grateful became something unique in galactic history. Not an empire, not a military force. but an alliance of species dedicated to helping others, expecting nothing in return. Over the following years, humanity led this mission with passionate dedication. Human medical ships traveled to plague worlds asking for no payment. Human engineers built infrastructure on struggling colonies claiming no territory. Human diplomats mediated conflicts between minor species, seeking no advantage. Admiral Minji established what she called the Die Protocol, named after her old captain. It was a military doctrine centered on protecting others rather than conquest. Human defense forces became renowned not for their victories in war, but for their interventions on behalf of the helpless. They stopped slavers preying on weak species. They evacuated planets threatened by natural disasters. They stood between bullies and victims again and again asking for nothing. And the galaxy noticed. Other species began following humanity's example. The Lithians established relief organizations. The Quellans shared their technology with defensive alliances. The Vorn created peacekeeping forces. The Sistari used their computer expertise to help species defend against cyber threats. The phrase acting human entered galactic vocabulary. It meant helping others even when it cost you something. It meant standing up for the weak. It meant choosing compassion over convenience. The ancient powers of the Galactic Council watched all this with concern. They were not being replaced. They still had their wealth and territory, but their moral authority was crumbling. More and more species looked to the Covenant as an example of how civilizations should behave. The Krath Dominion, once feared, became isolated. Species they had once terrorized now stood protected by mutual defense pacts. The Dominion did not fall. It simply became irrelevant, a relic of an age that was ending. On New Haven, the monument to Dai and Huan was completed. It bore an inscription in 113 languages, but the human version read simply, "We remember those who remember us." Beneath that, a longer inscription explained, "In the year 2287, humanity saved the Volani people expecting nothing in return." That act of kindness rippled across the galaxy, creating an alliance of the grateful. May we always remember that strength is measured not by who we conquer, but by who we protect. Admiral Minji stood before that monument on the anniversary of the Battle of Terra. Around her, thousands had gathered. Humans, Volani, Lithians, Quellan, Vorn, Sistari, and dozens of other species. They had come to remember the dead and celebrate the living. 4 years ago, Captain Day made a choice, Minji told them. He chose to help strangers. That choice cost him his life, but it saved a species. It created an alliance. It changed the galaxy. She looked at the faces around her, so many different forms of life. We honor him not by mourning, but by continuing his work, by choosing every day to help others. Mankind never forgets a favor. Their payback shakes. Worlds 50 years after the Battle of Terra, the galaxy looked different. Not in obvious ways. The same ancient species still controlled vast territories. The same trade routes connected thousands of worlds. The same council chambers held their endless debates. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Admiral Minji was old now. Her hair had gone white and her body moved slowly. But her mind remained sharp, and her eyes still held the fire that had burned during the battle for humanity's survival. She stood on the observation deck of a transport ship, watching New Haven grow larger in the viewport. "Admiral, we'll be docking in 10 minutes, the pilot announced. Minji nodded. She had been invited back to New Haven for the 50th anniversary of the battle. The monument to Dai and Huan had become a pilgrimage site. Every year, thousands visited to remember the act of kindness that had changed the galaxy. As the transport descended, Minji could see how much New Haven had grown. The small hidden colony of 50,000 Volani had become a thriving world of 3 million. But it was not just Volani anymore. Representatives from hundreds of species lived there now, working together on projects that benefited everyone. The Covenant of the Grateful had kept its promise. For 50 years they had dedicated themselves to helping others, and the results were visible everywhere. A young Volani met Minji at the landing pad. Her wings were a brilliant blue, decorated with patterns that reminded Minji of Elder Huan. "Admiral Minji? I am Sora, Elder Huan's great-granddaughter. It is an honor to meet you." "The honor is mine," Minji replied. "You look like your great-grandfather." Sora smiled. "I study Earth history. I'm writing my thesis on the Iron Promise and how one act of kindness changed galactic civilization." Will you tell me about Captain Day? What was he like? As they walked through the gardens, Minji remembered. Day was not extraordinary. He was just a cargo ship captain, trying to make a living in the outer systems. But he had a quality that I think defined him. He could not stand by while others suffered. It was not even a choice for him, really. It was just who he was. They stopped at the monument. It had been expanded over the years. Now it showed not just Day and Juan, but scenes from the Battle of Terra, images of Covenant ships helping refugees, depictions of species working together. He changed everything. Sora said softly, "One person. One choice. That is the lesson," Minji agreed. That one person can matter. That one act of kindness can ripple across decades, across the galaxy. The ceremony that evening was attended by representatives from 300 species. The Covenant of the Grateful had grown far beyond its original 113 members. Species joined not for military protection, but because they wanted to be part of something meaningful. They wanted to help others. Minji was invited to speak. She stood before thousands, feeling the weight of her years. Behind her, a hologram showed the Iron Promise in its final moments. Captain Day's face calm as he chose death over abandoning children. 50 years ago, Captain Day saved the Vellani people, Minji began. He did not know what would happen. He did not know the Vellani would save humanity. He did not know his choice would create the Covenant. He simply could not let children die while he watched. She paused, looking at the diverse crowd. Today we live in a different galaxy, not because of wars or conquests, but because Day's example inspired others. The Vellani repaid his kindness by saving humanity. Humanity chose to continue that legacy by helping others, and species across the galaxy learned that compassion is not weakness, that helping others makes us all stronger. A human student from Earth asked a question. "Admiral, did Captain Day ever regret his choice? Did he know he was going to die?" Minji thought carefully. "I was there in the escape pod with him before the end. He was scared. Of course he was scared, but he told me something I have never forgotten. He said, if we only help when it is convenient, what are we really worth?" She looked at the young faces in the crowd. That is the question we must all answer. Not just humans. Every species. Every person. What are we worth? Are we worth only what we can take? What we can control? Or are we worth what we give? Who we help? Who we save? After the ceremony, Minji walked alone through the gardens. She found a quiet spot beneath trees that had been grown from seeds of her own homeworld. Earth willows, their branches swaying gently. A small group approached. They were children, perhaps 10 years old, from at least 6 different species. A human boy stepped forward nervously. "Admiral Minji, we're studying the Battle of Terra in school. Can you tell us what it was like?" Minji sat down on a bench and the children gathered around her. "It was terrible," she said honestly. "War always is. We lost so many people, good people who should have lived long lives. But you won," a Lithian child said, her crystalline form reflecting rainbow light. "We survived," Minji corrected. "That is different than winning. But yes, we survived because species from across the galaxy chose to stand with humanity, species who owed us nothing, who risked everything." "Why do you think they did that?" A Vellani child raised his hand. "Because humanity saved Elder Juan and the other Vellani." They remembered. "That is part of it," Minji agreed. "But I think it is more than that. The Vellani told your ancestors a story about humans who chose to help strangers. And that story mattered to them. It made them want to be the kind of people who help others too." A Quellan girl spoke up. "My grandmother says that humans taught the galaxy about kindness." Minji shook her head gently. "No, child. Humans did not invent kindness. Every species is capable of compassion. What Captain Day did was remind everyone that kindness matters, that it has power, that one act of helping others can change everything." She looked at each child. "You are the future. You will grow up in a galaxy shaped by that lesson. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you only help when it is easy? Or will you choose to help others even when it costs you something?" The human boy thought about this seriously. "I want to be like Captain Day. I want to help people." "Then help people," Minji said simply. "You do not need to wait until you are grown. You can start now. Help a friend who is struggling. Stand up for someone who is being treated badly. Share what you have with those who have less. These small acts matter. They add up to something enormous." As the children left, chattering excitedly, Minji felt a presence beside her. It was President Taeyang, himself old now, no longer in office but still influential. "You gave them a good lesson," he said, sitting down beside her. "I gave them the truth," Minji replied, "that we are all capable of making choices that matter, that we all have the power to help others." Taeyang looked up at the stars visible through the trees. "Do you ever wonder what Day would think if he could see what his choice created?" Minji smiled. "I think he would be surprised, and probably embarrassed by all the attention. Day was not trying to be a hero. He was just trying to do the right thing. That is what makes him a hero," Taeyang said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Two old humans far from Earth, surrounded by gardens grown by alien hands, in a colony that existed because humanity had once chosen compassion over convenience. "The galaxy is better now," Taeyang said finally. "Not perfect, but better?" "Yes," Minji agreed. "Species help each other. The weak are protected. Kindness is valued, not mocked. It is not the galaxy Day knew. It is better." Across the galaxy, the changes were visible in countless small ways. On the world of Keltar 7, human and Lithian engineers worked together to build schools for refugee children. On Quellan Prime, medical teams from 12 species collaborated on curing diseases. On Vorn, human diplomats helped negotiate peace between warring factions. The Covenant of the Grateful operated 300 relief ships now, traveling to worlds in need. They asked for no payment. They claimed no territory. They simply helped, then moved on to the next crisis. Other species had formed similar organizations. The Lithian Relief Corps, the Quellan Aid Network, the Vorn Peacekeepers, all inspired by the example set by humanity and the Villani. Even the ancient powers had changed. The Galactic Council had reformed many of its laws. They could no longer ignore genocides. They had to respond to humanitarian crises. They had to protect minor species, not because they wanted to, but because public opinion across the galaxy demanded it. The Krath Dominion still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Their brutal policies had been exposed and condemned. Trade with Krath space had dried up. Young Krath, born after the Battle of Terra, questioned their civilization's old ways. Change was coming slowly, even there. On Earth, in a museum dedicated to the Iron Promise, children visited to learn about Captain Day and his crew. The museum held artifacts from the ship, personal items recovered from the wreckage. Dee's captain's log, Minji's engineering tools, photographs of the crew smiling, unaware of the fate that awaited them. A quote from Day was inscribed on the museum wall, visible to everyone who entered. "We can't just leave while children die. That's not who we are." Parents brought their children to see that quote. Teachers explained what it meant. And slowly, generation by generation, the idea took root, that humanity was defined not by strength or intelligence but by compassion, by the choice to help others,